You explained yourself, laid it out clearly, gave them the context, the reasoning, the full picture, and somehow that made everything worse. Not because you were wrong, because the moment you explained, you handed them something they were never supposed to have. Most men think explaining is honesty. It is not. Explanation is transfer. Every time you explain yourself, you are moving something from your side of the table to theirs. Your next move, your reasons, your limits, your failures, your ambitions, your loyalty, the depth of what you actually know. Each one feels reasonable to share in the moment. Each one costs more than silence ever would. Machiavelli understood something that most men spend their entire lives learning the hard way. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few really know what you are. The gap between those two things is not a problem. It is an asset. The man who is fully explained is fully predictable. The fully predictable man is the easiest man in any room to position against. There are 7 things you must never explain to anyone, not because the explanation would be dishonest, because the explanation is the mistake. First, and this one is already happening every time you talk about something before it exists. You have been working on something, a plan, a decision, a project that is not finished yet, but is far enough along that you can see it clearly. And someone asked how things were going, and you told them, not to impress anyone. Just because the question was there and so was the answer, and it felt natural to share it. And something changed. Not dramatically. Just a shift. A few questions you were not ready for. A comment that sounded supportive but introduced doubt where there was none before. A suggestion that required you to defend something you had not yet decided to defend. And by the time you walked away, you were carrying something extra, not momentum. The weight of other people's unfinished reactions to something that was not yet real. Most men think announcing a plan creates energy around it. It does, the wrong kind. The moment your intention is known, people begin reacting to the idea of it, not to the thing itself. They cannot react to the thing itself. It does not exist yet. So they react to their version of it, their fears, their comparisons, their need to feel included. And all of that shapes the ground you were planning to move on before you have moved a single step. Machiavelli was precise about this. He wrote that no action succeeds better than the one concealed until the moment of execution. He was not describing military campaigns exclusively. He was describing the relationship between intention and interference. The moment an intention is visible, interference becomes possible. And interference rarely improves something that has not yet had time to become real. Think about the last thing you built quietly. No updates, no previews, no checking in, just work privately until it was done. And then you showed up with the result. The reaction in that room was completely different from every time you announced something first, because results are received differently than promises. You cannot argue with what already exists. You can always argue with what someone said they would do. Try this once this week. Not 7 times. Once. Find the one thing you were about to mention that is not finished yet, and say nothing about it. Watch what you are able to do inside that silence that you could not do before. You are in the middle of a conversation you did not want to be in. You have already decided to leave something. A job, a situation, an arrangement that stopped working a while ago. And the person across from you is asking why. And you are answering. Because that is what honest people do. Because you want them to understand. Because explaining feels like the respectful thing. And as you are speaking, something happens. Each reason you give, they address. That one is fixable. That one was a misunderstanding. That one just needs a little more time. And suddenly you are not leaving anymore. You are negotiating about whether you should. And you are doing it with your own words. That is not a negotiation they started. You started it the moment you explained. If you have ever made a decision clearly, then explained it and ended up less certain than when you began, drop something in the comments. Because this is one of the most common ways a man loses ground he already had. Not through weakness, through the reasonable-sounding instinct to be understood. Most men believe explaining their reasons shows respect. It does not. It shows where the door can be reopened. Every reason you give is a hinge, and hinges can be worked. The mechanism underneath this is simple. When someone senses they are about to lose access to something, the thing they are losing becomes more valuable. Not because it changed, because scarcity works that way. Your explanation tells them exactly what they are losing, and exactly which part of it to address to keep you from going, so they address it. Not because they care about your reasons, because your reasons gave them something to solve, and solving problems feels like power. You handed them the problem. You handed them the power. Here is the alternative. A decision does not require a supporting argument. It requires a decision. This no longer works for me. That is a full sentence. It is not the beginning of a discussion. It is not an invitation to find solutions. It is a door. When you feel the pull to explain why you are leaving, notice it. That pull is the signal that you are about to turn a decision into a negotiation. The exit does not need justification to be real. It just needs to happen. Your reasons are yours. The decision is the only thing they need from you. The third one is harder to hear, because it means that the person who always seemed to know exactly how far they could push was not unusually perceptive. They were using information you gave them. Limits that are announced are limits that get tested. Not because people are calculating, because human beings calibrate naturally based on available information. When you tell someone where you stop, you have given them a reference point. They will use it, not always consciously, but they will orbit that point with a precision that over time starts to feel intentional. Because it is, just not the way you think. They are not malicious. They are simply operating inside a range you defined for them. If they push to the limit and you enforce it, they now know the limit is real. If they push to it and you do not enforce it, they now know the limit was not real. Either way, they have information that would have taken them months to gather otherwise. You compressed that entire learning process into a single conversation. You have been in a situation like this. Someone in your life who always found the edge. A colleague who always knew the exact amount of work they could pass to you before you said something. A person close to you who always stopped just before the point where you would actually change something. You spent a long time thinking they were reading you well. They were, because you wrote it down for them. Think about someone in your life right now who is operating this way. Share this video with them. Not because they need to be called out. Because most people doing this do not know they learned it from what you said. They are not the problem. The announcement was, the alternative is not to become cold. The alternative is to stop narrating. Move when you need to move, without the prior speech about what would happen if things got to this point. When someone discovers your limit by watching you act on it, they learn something completely different. They learn it is real. They learn it is unpredictable. They learn there was no warning before it arrived. That changes everything about how they calculate next time. Real limits do not need to be explained to be enforced. They need to be enforced. That is the only announcement that matters. People rarely judge failure the way men fear they will. What they actually judge is the relationship the man has with his failure. And most men make that relationship very visible the moment they try to manage it. You failed at something. It did not work. And someone found out, or the subject came up and you explained it, gave context, showed that you understood what went wrong, demonstrated that the failure was circumstantial, not structural, proved that you had learned from it. that you would do it differently now. Most men believe explaining failure demonstrates self-awareness. It demonstrates something else entirely. It demonstrates that the failure is still present tense, that it is still taking up space, that you need the other person to adjust their perception because you cannot fully adjust your own without their help. This is the part most people miss. Explaining a past failure does not close it. It keeps it open. Think about a situation at work where a project did not go the way it was supposed to. Two people are in the room. One of them gives a full account. What happened, why it happened, what they learned, what they would do differently, why it will not happen again. Thorough, honest, detailed. And yet the room is slightly uncomfortable, not because the explanation was wrong, because the explanation revealed how much space the failure still occupies. The second person says something different. That did not land the way we needed it to. Here is where we are going instead. And moves. That second person has given the room almost nothing to hold. The first person has given the room a complete picture with their face attached to it. The explanation did not protect them. It preserved the failure in detail. Take one thing you have over-explained in the past. A mistake, a missed target, a decision that did not work. Think about the last time you brought it up when it was not necessary to. That is the thing I want you to stop carrying publicly. Not because it does not matter. Because every time you explain it, you are telling the room that it still does. The failure is behind you. Everything you explain about it is a hand extended backward. Set it down. Move in the direction you are actually going. The direction is what they will remember. Most men kill their best work before it has time to become real. Not through lack of effort, through the need to be witnessed in the middle of it. 5. If you are building something right now, not just thinking about it, actually working on it, this section was written for you. If you are not building anything, you can move to the next part. But I do not think that is who is watching this. I think you are here because you already sense what we are about to say, and some part of you has already lived it. You had something. Months of quiet work, progress that was not ready to be shown to anyone, something that only existed inside a closed room, and someone you trusted asked what you were working on, and you told them. Not everything, just enough to feel less alone with it. And within 2 weeks it had changed. They mentioned it to someone else, not to hurt you, just as a detail. Just as something interesting they happened to know, and suddenly people around you were forming opinions about something that did not exist yet, asking for updates on something that had no timeline, expressing support in a way that felt like a debt before you had produced anything. And the work that was building quietly in the closed room now had an audience watching it not be finished. Most men think sharing ambition creates momentum. It creates expectation. And expectation is the most efficient way to turn an unfinished goal into a source of shame. The ambition you announce is the ambition you now owe people. When you reach it, you are only doing what you said you would. There is no arrival. There is only confirmation. When you do not reach it on the schedule, they imagined you have failed publicly in something that should have been allowed to exist privately for as long as it needed to. The man who builds quietly shows up with a result instead of a promise. Results are received differently than promises. No one can argue with what already exists. Your ambition is not a secret you are ashamed of. It is a project that deserves to be finished before it belongs to anyone else. Build in the space that silence creates. Arrive with the thing. The thing does not need an introduction. I have watched this one cost people more than they realized until it was already gone. 6. You are loyal to someone, a person in your professional life, someone you have worked alongside long enough to actually trust, and at some point you said so. Not as a grand declaration, just honestly in a conversation that felt mutual. I would not do that to them. If something came up, I would say it to their face. They have been straight with me, and I intend to be straight with them. All of it true, and all of it immediately useful to the person who received it. Most men believe declaring loyalty builds trust. In the moment, it does. It also does something else. It tells the person receiving it exactly how far they can push before you would actually withdraw. They now know your calculus. They know that exposing them or stepping back from them carries a cost for you that you have already said you are not willing to pay. That is not a bond. That is a structural advantage. And people use structural advantages without always knowing they are doing it. Not because they are calculating. Because when pressure comes, humans reach for the person they are most confident will hold it. You told them you would hold it, so they hand it to you again and again, and you hold it because that is who you said you are. You have been in a version of this, where you said you had someone's back and spent the next year absorbing things that were never yours to absorb, not because they were using you. Because you had removed the uncertainty that would have made them more careful. I know this one is not easy to sit with, especially if you are the kind of person who means it when you say it. The point is not to become someone who does not mean it. The point is to let the meaning live in your behavior, not in your declarations. Be loyal. Let people observe it over time. Let them conclude it from evidence. The man who announces loyalty transfers a tool. The man who demonstrates it quietly builds something that cannot be leveraged because it was never stated as a promise. Let your actions be the sentence. Do not write the caption under it. 7. Last one, and the one that determines whether everything else in this video works or just sounds good. There is a difference between being knowledgeable and being unreadable. Most men spend years building knowledge. Almost no one thinks carefully about how much of it to show. You know things. You have read, observed, thought carefully about the world you operate in. And when a question comes up that you can answer, you answer it fully. You show the reasoning, the depth of the reading behind the conclusion. The years of watching the same pattern play out in different rooms. Most men believe demonstrating knowledge builds credibility. Up to a point, it does. Past that point, it does something else. It tells people exactly what you are working from. Your framework. Where your analysis starts, which means they know where to push before you have even finished speaking. The man who shows all his knowledge is a man whose thinking can be mapped. And the man whose thinking can be mapped arrives at every significant conversation with his position already understood before he has said a word. Think about two people in the same room. Both know the subject well. The first establishes this immediately. References context prior experience. The full architecture. By the time they make their point, everyone knows how they got there. The second says very little until the moment they choose to say something. And what they say lands differently. Not because it is more intelligent, because no one had traced the path to it in advance. The first person is knowledgeable. The second person is interesting. Knowledgeable is comfortable. Interesting is where real attention lives. If this channel has given you something useful, subscribe and turn on notifications. Everything we make is built for the person who wants to understand the game at the level it actually operates, not the version most people talk about, the version underneath. If that is who you are, you already know this is where you belong. Answer what the situation requires, not everything you have. Let there be more beneath what you show. Let them sense depth without measuring it. The man who shows everything has given the room a ceiling. They know where his thinking ends. The man who shows only what is necessary has given the room something it cannot fully see. That is harder to prepare against and far harder to dismiss. Give them enough to respect, keep enough to wonder. The space between those two things is where your actual power lives. A man is sitting across from someone who has spent the last hour asking questions. Good questions. He has answered each one. Precisely. When the conversation ends, the other person feels like they understand him well. They do not. He answered everything they asked. He revealed nothing they did not. Those are two entirely different things, and only one of them has a cost. 7 things. None of them require dishonesty. None of them require you to become cold or closed or difficult. All of them require understanding one thing. Explanation is a form of transfer. Every time you explain your next move, your reasons for leaving your limits, your failures, your ambitions, your loyalty, or how much you actually know, you are moving something from your side of the room to theirs. They may never use it, but it is no longer yours. And the accumulation of what people hold about you is the accumulation of what is available when things shift. Silence is not withdrawal. It is not performance. It is the recognition that some things become smaller the moment they are spoken and larger the longer they are kept. The people who truly understand you did not get there through your explanations. They got there through time, through watching how you move when you are not performing transparency. Give people your behavior. Let the behavior do the explaining. If something in this landed differently than you expected, the subscribe button is there.